I can take a city tour at 11 o'clock from in front of that UBS bank building. But I'll continue to wander on. Working my way back to the river, I just noticed these beautiful accoutrements to this building. Huh, I wonder what inspires that kind of design. Almost looks like, you know, Turkish or something of that nature. Look at the beautiful balconies. Now, a big duh that just dawned on me is that one of the reasons these churches have the clocks is because Switzerland is known for its clocks. Two churches right now near what I think is, not sure which bridge this is. These churches are on the opposite sides of the street that goes across Munster Bridge, I believe. And we're right alongside of the river. I want to get a closer look at those fish-like creatures off to the right of the clock. This church that we looked at earlier is called, and it began as a convent for women built by a man who I think his spinster daughter needed it, and then she became legendary for developing and running it. This seems to be Zurich in a nutshell. Faint remains, although here it's distinctive of the past. Notice those weathered arch details up on that second floor, and then all of the new. Look at something like this, moss encrusted and gnarled and weathered. I tried to imagine who were the people and what were the lives like who walked by here as I am walking by. Once upon a time, these faux columns were complete. And that face may have been painted, may not have been, but it would have been distinctive. You wonder what those down-facing hooks are for. Here we have, I think, the remains of perhaps an original cloister, so that here there may have been gardens, as that seems to intimate there. We'll look at these paintings as well as these columns a little more closely. Obviously, and it's done to be obvious, we can see where the restoration stone was placed. The paintings seem to be a meeting of perhaps important political people and the clergy who lived here. Although this is for women, so why are those guys there? Here in the cloister area further on, some paintings. Now we get more women. This seems to make sense. What may be some old carved detail on this faux column that may have been on all those columns we saw. A man tied to a post, the only woman in the scene. The man to the left of the tied man with his arms behind his back, perhaps secured also. As one might imagine, these stories are stories well known to the people who understand and know this culture and history. Looking further down, it's interesting that a cloister like this would have been protected. This is a very pretty arched system. Suggests more aesthetic than Fraumunster Church, even on the inside. So some or all of this portion in front of us would have been gardens. Whether this fountain would have existed in the day, I don't know. I'm kind of guessing out of respect. When they built that building, they purposely did not encroach or disturb this fountain. Now most of what we see here is new. Perhaps those statues are not, or maybe copies of originals. That's not unheard of. The second floor shows a great deal of weathering as opposed to the newness of the first and third floor. This door detail, again, is much more interesting than you usually find, particularly when we see large churches that simply have a painted detail, and a simple one at that. This may most describe both the purpose and some of the functioning of this place. I'm looking back upriver from where we've come. Church spires abound, as do swans and ducks. These are relatively modest boats, well cared for, but a nice appurtenance, if you will, to the lifestyle of the people who live about. Imagine living in one of those houses near just below Lindenhof, where you have access to it as a park, and you have access to the water. One of the very sophisticated public toilets along the river, which I am waiting to use. Here's the front of that building that faces the water, or the river. Notice the metal shades that cover all of the windows, but yet allow some light when they choose to have it. Cute little device, particularly if a person's hauling their kids around. Almost looks like it might be a public bicycle. I'm going to operate his drone. I want to see it function. You have a camera on board. Excuse me. At the inlet of Zurich Bay, or Zurich Lake. I'll cross over the bridge and walk. The drone has it right there, so you can see it there, right above these fellows, quite high actually. I wonder what it does for large birds like that see it and can hear it. That large bird's not intimidated by it, may be intrigued by it, although it's not pursuing it. Where we've come from is referred to as Walkabout, and these are well-designed quays all the way down this lake. Many for the primary purpose of people's leisure. And I think that's a cruise ship, takes about an hour and a half. River again, I just wanted to illustrate how Zurich has utilized its shoreline, for lack of a better term, for a walkway for pedestrians. I'm just amazed at cities that don't do this, that sell it out to the highest bidder for the one-time gain, usually by bribery. corruption of some form. Gaggle of feeding birds.